Now we will have a session with the information from the Swedish Polar Research Secretariat. And the first presenter will be Ted Karlsson, who is a Research Communications Officer at our Secretariat. And you will talk about joint polar researchers in Sweden. Ted.
Yes, thank you, Katarina. Okay, polar researchers in Sweden. I think some of you already know about this. You have registered already. This is a public searchable list with polar researchers in Sweden. This is an initiative that we started last year, and it is found on our website, polar.se. Currently we have 112 researchers that have signed on, and I hope we will have many more. So the question is what is the purpose with this list? I would say that it showcases Swedish polar research. It shows the breadth and the depth of our research and the strength of this community. So the more we get to this list, the better. It also facilitates the Secretariat's communication with the researchers, and you will get a newsletter regularly with events, calls, news, and so forth. It is also a way for you, for the researchers, to find other polar researchers and perhaps other individuals may be interested, such as journalists. They can find researchers. I will show you the actual list and how you can filter soon. But there are different ways to filter researchers, and each researcher gets a profile card with summary information, including SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and a link to your professional page, which is optional. So this is how it looks. What you can't see on this picture is that on the top there is a picture with some mountains and a couple of birds. If you click on that picture, you will come to the registration page. As you can see, you have different fields. First, you have a free text field where you can type anything and see if it will give you some filters when you press the search button. But you can also use the region and search by region. You can search by university. Perhaps you want to arrange a workshop at your university, then you can see what are the polar researchers at my university, for instance. And then we have the keywords, which I think it's maybe the most interesting filter. When you start typing in this field, you will immediately go to that letter, so you can see all the research areas starting with that letter. But you can also just scroll through the entire list from A to Z. And as you can see, you can see 6 of the researchers in the list on this page, on this slide. And if you click on one of these cards, you will enlarge it, and then you will get a little more information about each researcher, such as their title, their affiliation, their geographical areas they are working with. Some of you have added your professional page, which there is a link to. Then you can see all the research areas and also the SDGs that this researcher have selected that is connected to their research. We have also made some statistics from the SDGs. This is based on 110 researchers, and as you can see, all the 17 SDGs are represented by the researchers, and the most common are climate action, goal 13, life below water, goal 14, and life on land, goal 15. So finally, please, those who haven't signed up, go to our page. It's under research support, and then there will find a list. Thank you.
Ted. Thank you, Ted. Yeah, I would really encourage you to become a member in this network. It shows, as Ted said, the breadth of polar scientists and the impact on actually all the possibilities to increase the knowledge on all the 17 SDGs. So thank you very much, Ted. Now, my colleague Åsa Lindgren, here you are. Oh, you didn't get a cap, but I guess you already have one. Yes. This is for our guests, so yes. You also have a cap or two already. Yeah, thank you. Åsa Lindgren, you are head of Department for Ship-Based Research Support at our Secretariat, and you will give us some information of an upcoming expedition this spring with the research icebreaker Oden, and the expedition is ARTofMELT. Please.
Yes. Yes, I will talk about the upcoming expedition ARTofMELT, which is an abbreviation of the title of this expedition, Atmospheric Rivers and the Onset of Sea Ice Melt. And I'm very lucky because I have the chief scientist, Professor Mikael Tjärnström, here. So if we have specific scientific questions considering the theme and the oncoming projects, I will address them to Mikael. I will talk about the expedition ARTofMELT in a very general context and from the perspective of the logistic support and what we can offer to the science community in general with this expedition. But I will first tell a few words about the main science goals of this expedition. It will be a very atmospheric focused expedition, but also marine chemistry, snow and ice properties, and upper layer ocean properties in relation to melt occasions up in the Arctic. And to be able to catch those melt occasions, we will go up very, very early with the icebreaker Oden. We will leave Sweden already 1st of May, which is very unusual. Most of the Oden expeditions have been in August, September, due to the minimal ice extent. It's easier to move around up there. But this will be a very specific expedition. And we don't really know what it will be like in 2023. Usually when we plan Oden expeditions, we are investigating the ice sea charts or the ice charts. Mostly we use the ones from Bremerhaven, and then we investigate how the ice, and then we plan the routes, and we plan to estimate the fuel capacities and the costs for moving around, etc. But this expedition is really, really difficult to plan, since we're gonna try to catch those melt occasions, and since the ice conditions are quite unknown what it will be like. These are two pictures. One is from May 2020, and the other one is from 2021. And the green star is quite close to the position where the Mosaic expedition were in May 2020, but unfortunately they had to leave for about 6 weeks to go for a rotation in Longyearbyen to have a crew change and science member change. So 6 weeks of data is lacking from the Mosaic expedition. So we will aim to come to this site and then start off from there. But as you can see on those two pictures, the ice can vary a lot between 2 years. And dark purple on those pictures are very, very multi-year thick ice. Difficult even for Oden to move around in. So the plan is to deploy Oden somewhere up in this region, and then we will try to just be in the ice. While waiting, we will use the time to do as much science as possible while waiting. And together with the projects on board, there will also be several modelers involved, shore-based, mostly in Stockholm, but also in Germany and other places, international collaborations also in the model groups. So we will have a tight connection here from the ship-based research projects with the modelers, and there will be a communication back and forth. We will sending home data, they will do analysis, and we will get forecasts, very qualified forecasts, back on board. So almost on a daily basis, we will consider whether there is something coming, approaching us, a warm air intrusion. And then we're gonna try to move Oden to where it's going to happen. So this will be the setup of the expedition, a very, very tentative and open route. And then we will follow the forecast scenarios and then move Oden. But as I said, of course, we will use the time while waiting as good as we can. So we have plenty of science going on simultaneously. If you're not involved in a project on board or in a project shore-based, there will be a lot of open data. On Oden, the Swedish Polar Research Secretariat has a lot of sensors, and also together with SMHI, we have a weather sensor system that we are trying to publish immediately after Oden is hitting a network again. However, we also have an approach to the research project that we encourage the open data policy, and we are trying to, through the National Data Service, the Swedish National Data Service, SND, to have the metadata from the Oden expeditions there. We will publish all data that SPRS produce, and we will also try to link to all the data repositories from the science projects. So you can always go to SND website and search for the Oden expedition, and there you should be able to find out about the different repositories. Yes, and I should actually also mention that we are working with installations. The Swedish Research Council made an effort and an application process for scientists to apply for Swedish national infrastructure for science. So we have instrumentations on board in 4 different modules that we are accepted in the application. And the first module is about acoustics and multibeam and eco-sounders. So that has just been upgraded on board Oden in the dry dock this autumn. And we also have meteorological sensors within the ARCAS project, Arctic Climate Across Scales. So we have a lot of upgrading processes going on in this module. And we have a third model, which is about new ferry box systems and different sensors on the CTD. And the last project is petroscopy and magnetism project, which is led by Uppsala University, but this project is not coming on board for this expedition, but it will show up later on in the planning, 2024 most hopefully. We have, with the ARTofMELT expedition, a Swedish core theme, led by, as I said, Mikael Tjärnström. However, we have been working with international fundings agencies as well, so we have been inviting international scientists. We are waiting still to have all of the international berths on board financially confirmed, but we already now know that we are losing one upper ocean layer group from the US. So we will most likely address specific research themes to come on board and help us to fill these gaps, because the other projects coming on board that's already planning to come, they are dependent on the data from those different projects that we have planned the expedition around. So please follow us. I'm connecting back to Ted's talk as well. Submit to the Polar Researchers Network, because what we most likely will do is that we will go for the keywords in the network and address oceanographers and specific themes if we see that something is missing. So please use the network. That will be the way that we communicate if we are missing specific science themes. On this Polar website, you can also be able to follow blogs from the expedition, and we will also announce when we publish data. And we might also plan for an early career scientist program on board, as well as an artist program, very much dependent on when we have the international funding confirmed, because there might be opportunities, but we don't know this yet. So please follow news on the Polar website. Yes, that was my message. And of course, Oden is a fantastic platform, but for the ship-based future, we are really looking forward to all upcoming expedition and the Arctic Cable Connect project and our new vessel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Åsa. Is there any questions for Åsa or for Ted? I forgot to ask for questions for you. Is there any urgent questions? No, and as Åsa said, Mikael Tjärnström in blue pullover here is sitting. So please spell questions to Mikael during lunchtime or after on the ARTofMELT. Thank you very much, Åsa.
Yeah,
excellent. Now I welcome my colleague Cecilia Lund, Senior Research Officer at our Secretariat, and you will talk about an upcoming call within the GEO-EO theme within the Polar research process.
Exactly, and exactly 2 calls are upcoming calls.
Yes.
So, my name is Cecilia Lund. I'm a Senior Research Officer at the Secretary. Today I'm going to inform you about the upcoming call that we will announce early in 2023. Some of you are familiar with the Secretary's mission, what we do and how we do it, but we're always looking for a new researcher that we want to reach, but also update you about information that we have. So I will make a small brief about our application process. So in 2020, we implement a new application process calling the Polar Research Process. It is a bottom-up process conducting our 7 steps. And I want to highlight 3 important steps that we often get questions about. The first step is this bottom-up process that I said. It means that it will be a call for a thematic proposal. It's in a broader perspective, it has to be a multidisciplinary scientific questions linked to the polar regions. There has to be several research disciplines included, and we want to see both field researcher and non-field researcher for example, modelers. And that's a little bit more advanced than a single research project. Step number 3 is when a theme is decided. Later on, the secretary will announce for an open call. It's on a project level. And for this theme, individual researcher can apply to join an expedition, but it has to fit, every individual research project has to fit under this thematic umbrella that has been decided in the previous step. And the last step happens after the expedition, which means that it has to generate a synthesis report, which aims to summarize and concentrate the research result, and it's in a useful way, because our primary target group is decision makers. So that's the process. So since in the first round, since 2020, we had several projects, several themes that was approved, and you can see 2 of them are following this line. Åsa Lindgren, she talked about the ARTofMELT, it has come the farthest, but we also have GeoEO, which will be one of the call that we will announce next year, and it's roughly 1 year apart in the planning process. But we will also start a second round of this polar research process, which means that we will open a call on a theme level, on a program level, which in aiming for Antarctica. And what we can say today, we plan to open in January 2023. The research theme should in principle be in the Drottningholm land. As Katarina said previously in the introduction, available infrastructure will be defined and described when we open the call. And also to this application process, we will use an external review panel. The other call is GeoEO. It's a expedition heading for northern Greenland and the adjacent Arctic Ocean. We will open this, we plan to open this call in February, and it's on this project level. It means that single individual researcher can apply for this call. When we decide for an expedition, you will find them in our timetable called Oden, and there will you also find more information for our calls and description about our polar research infrastructure and so on. And both Anna-Maria Pertu and we work with this planning of this call. So talk to us at the breaks or just contact us later on.
Is there any questions we can ask jointly in that case? Thank you. Is there any questions about it? Yes, Anna? Sorry? Yeah, okay. It is not limited exactly, but we have the infrastructure at Drottningholm land, and that is what we can offer, and that is where we can make any added value to the research community. There is a lot of other research infrastructures on Antarctica, McMurdo on the western and so on, but we are not mandated to offer that to you without collaborations and so on. So this is to make added value from what we can offer to the researchers.
But if we, for example, have a collaboration with the US or so?
Yes.
Is that possible within this call?
Well, for now, we have not said yes or no to anything, but we are always open for international collaboration. So I would say yes, but we are restricted to what we have in founding from our government and the research infrastructure that we can offer. But via collaboration, I would say that there is more possibilities, of course. So we have to discuss that.
Yep.
But we see this will be based also on the interest that we get from the scientist. In the best of the words, we would like to have the research icebreaker Oden down to Antarctica, but as I know that you know, this has not been possible since we were there the last time, 2010-11.
The epic cruise.
Yes, the epic cruise. Thank you, Cecilia. I know also if you are wondering about the polar research process, please ask us during lunch and so on, because I know that there are some worries about the mechanisms. First, the researchers apply for a theme, and then it's not guaranteed that they 4 years after are can go into this theme. So we are calling for a new application on the project level. So, but we can discuss this, and this is the first run of the polar research process, and we will continuously improve our routines to make this work smoothly. Okay, next presenter is Håkan Grudd, my colleague from Research and Research Support Coordinator and Deputy Station Manager at Abisko Scientific Research Station. Welcome, Håkan, and you will talk about Abisko Scientific Research Station monitoring and open data.
Thank you, and hello, everyone. I will talk a little bit about our work with making data from the Abisko Research Station available as open data. When Lena asked the question, how many of you have been in Abisko, I saw a lot of hands in the air. So many of you are familiar with the station, but I will, in any case, start with a short introduction to the station. It's up in the north of Sweden, 200 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle. It's a year-round station, so we have a permanent staff of 10 people working up there. We have housing for about 70 people. It's easily accessible from road, railway, and you can take an airplane to Kiruna, and you can quickly be in Abisko. So it's really easy access for a research station up in the north. We have quite a lot of laboratories, workshops, and space for conferences, etc. And quite a lot of scientific equipment for scientific research, so we can help people to get around in the area. We have boats, and we have cars, and we have snowmobiles, etc. And as you know, this is a really old station. It opened in 1913 already, more than 100 years ago. And data has been collected from day one, so there's really a lot of data collected during this time. And we are now working on making all of this available as open data. Not all of it is digitized yet, but this is a work in progress. It's a huge material. Let's see, so. We have quite a lot of houses, and as you can see, the oldest ones are from 1912, and then it's been expanded over the years. We can have about 600 visitors each year. About 300 to 400 of these are scientists, and the rest are students and conference people. And this adds up to about 8,000 guests night per year at the moment. Of course, during the corona, we had a lower numbers, but then last summer we had really a lot again. So we had sort of a record last year. I think we were up to almost 9,000 guests night. 60 to 80 research projects are active every year. And these projects, they produce up to about 100 scientific papers every year. So it's quite a lot. We also have a few smaller field huts in the more remote areas. We have 5 of them, 2 on the northern side of Torneträsk, Kärkivägi up in the mountains, Stordalen, which you will hear my colleague Niklas Rakos talk more about in the next presentation. And then we have Kärkivägi, which I'm going to focus a little bit on. This station was established in 1965 by Uppsala University as a limnological research station. It was taken over by Abisko in 1990, and that's also when the ETAX project started, the International Tundra Experiment, ETAX. The research activities up here is now coordinated by Göteborg University, the Alpine and Polar Ecology Group. It's a small station, of course. We can have about 10 people staying up there, and you can access it by foot or by ski, or you can take a helicopter from Kiruna. Oh, not from Kiruna, but from Abisko, sorry. And of course, we have a lot of data collection at this site as well, and it's made, the ITEX data, for instance, is made available through their web page as open data. I just want to point to a very recent publication. It's a September issue of Arctic Science, where you have, it's dedicated to the ITEX program. And of course, there is also articles from Latnijaure in here, in this. As I said, Abisko has been active since 1913, and we have a lot of data that's close to or more than 100 years long. And this is a list of this data. The first measurements were already in the late 1800s. And of course, at that time, everything was manual. Today, we have automatic systems, and you see a picture of the synoptic weather station that SMHI has at the station. I'm going to show a couple of these long data sets. Of course, the long temperature record is maybe the most valuable we have. Abisko was named a Centennial Observing Station by the World Meteorological Organization last year. And this figure here shows you the annual mean temperature in Abisko. And as you can see, the mean annual temperature it's been below 0 for a long time, and it's a quite significant change in the last 30 years with positive temperatures. So this is a very clear trend that we also see in some of the other records. This is the ice observations on Lake Torneträsk. The green curve shows the number of days with ice on the lake for each year. And you can see the same trend here in the last 30 years, with a shorter period in the winter with ice coverage. And this is mainly due to the freezing takes place later in the season. So it's usually around Christmas, and then now in the last years it's been in January, quite normal. Another long record we have is phenology of mountain birch. These are data from bud burst dates in the spring. And this has, of course, been manual observations from the start, but now we also have phenological cameras that we can use, and I get a very precise date for this, the bud bursts. We have a gap in the data, as you can see, unfortunately. We haven't been able to find any data in our archives from that period. We also have some real-time data that you can look at. It's geophysical data. The Swedish Institute of Space Physics and the Stordalen Geophysical Observatory in Finland both have Aurora cameras, which you can access. And the Geological Survey of Sweden and also Stordalen has measurements of the geomagnetic field. And these are data that you can look at in real time. And that picture is actually from yesterday. It wasn't a very fantastic aurora yesterday, so it's just a gray. 2017, Abisko became a part of CITES, the Swedish Infrastructure for Ecosystem Science in Sweden, which is a VR-funded infrastructure. 9 research stations in Sweden, from southernmost Sweden to northernmost Sweden, are in this initiative. And that meant a large increase of automatic stations for our part. So we have automatic systems now in lakes and streams up in the Arctic areas and on Myers. So really a lot of data is now collected, but it's not presented real time yet. It's still a process of quality control before it's published. So we've come a long way from these first manual measurements, and a lot of our data can be downloaded today through SMHI's open data portal or through the CITES data portal. You can also go to our webpage to get information about where to get data and what data we have. And there are also other portals where you can download data from Abisko. Well, from different research groups. Your data, for instance, Magan, I think we can also find online. So we are trying to inform about these sources of data on our webpage. But this is a work in progress, so we haven't all the data there yet, but it's coming. Okay, that was my.
Thank you very much, Håkan.
Thank you.
Excellent. Any questions to Håkan? Oh, yeah, Magan.
No, but you were before talking about how to access the other infrastructures. Is it on? Yes, now it's on. Okay. So, no, I was just saying that before you were talking about how to access and how to plan to go to the other stations in Antarctica and also to access Oden. How do you do, I mean, of course I know because I have to work in Abisko, but how do you do to go to Abisko? What do you have to do as a scientist? Can anyone go there?
Well, you have to make an application through our system. And we do that through the Interact system today, because Abisko is a part of Interact, of course.
The sites.
Or the sites, yeah, it's the same system, but we still call it the Interact system in Abisko. But it's quite easy. Through our webpage, you make an application and then you get the decision in the springtime. And if there is space, and if it's a project that we find possible to host, then you're fine to come.
So please apply to Abisko through Interact. Yeah. No. Yeah. What we heard. Thank you. Okay, our next presenter is my colleague from Abisko. Hello, Niklas. Great to see you. Niklas Rakos is a research engineer at Abisko Scientific Research Station. And Niklas, you will talk about Abisko Scientific Research Station research from ICOS Stordalen. Welcome to us.
Yeah, thanks. I will introduce you to the ICOS that we have a station, or we are running one of the ICOS stations, and first I'll tell you some about the ICOS. So what is ICOS? It's a European network for research infrastructure, and we focus on the carbon cycle and especially then greenhouse gases. The aim of the or the mission of ICOS is to monitor land use effects on greenhouse gas emissions. And this is done by continuously collecting high quality standardized data at multiple sites, so all over Europe. We also make this data publicly accessible to the research community on the ICOS data portal. And I also want to point out that all this data should be long-term data, long-term monitoring. But some stations start up now, but hopefully all stations run long-term. The aims of the infrastructure is to contribute to large-scale reports and policy making, such as the IPCs, and also ICOS was appointed observer to the UNFCCC just 2 years ago, I think. So ICOS wants to have or can have an impact within the policy making. So what is actually the data that we collect? It's, as I said, greenhouse gas fluxes, and we use the equivariance technique for collecting those. But we also measure background data, which can support the flux calculations, and it's also, all this data is available to anyone who wants to use it. And we also do some campaign-based data collections of vegetation and soil, measuring the carbon stocks in those. I thought maybe I'll just quickly explain how the equivariance works. And first, we need to understand that the wind is not really laminar like in this picture, but it has a lot of eddies. And these eddies is actually what then the sum of these eddies are what we feel as the wind. And if we, with our system, measure the winds in 3 dimensions, and also at the same time the greenhouse gases, for example, carbon dioxide, we can calculate where the wind is coming from and where those packages of air is coming from with the certain concentration of greenhouse gas. So we can calculate a flux footprint where the carbon emissions are coming from. So back to the structure of ICOS. There are 3 thematic programs, and I'll just quickly show you. Here's the atmospheric stations. They can have really high towers, or they need to have high towers to be able to measure up in the actual atmosphere. So Hultmossa, which is close to Lund, has a 150-meter high tower, and there are 39 atmospheric stations within ICOS, and yeah, there are also a few up in the polar region. And these atmospheric stations with the high towers, they have obviously then pretty large uptake areas, footprints that I was talking about. Then there is also the ocean program, and there are ships that move around and measure. And then there are also static buoys and islands or coastal stations that can measure the winds coming from the ocean, and 23 stations within ICOS. And then we have the ecosystem stations. They have a small, they measure on a little bit smaller scale, but the uptake areas are still like, could be up to a few hundred meters wide. So yeah, here are examples of different ecosystems that are measured within ICOS. There are forests, and here we can have different kinds of forests, obviously. And then agriculture, also here, different kinds of agriculture. Also, they look differently where you are in Europe. Urban areas, yeah, measuring the greenhouse gas emissions from industry areas, roads, or actually also urban green spaces. And then we have the wetlands, which we have our site up in Abisko is a wetland site. But before I get to our site, I'll just show you the uses of the ICOS data. Yeah, it's good to, you can evaluate effects of anthropogenic and natural processes, and we can also identify anthropogenic sources, and with this also predict future changes in greenhouse gas balances. Here's another example of how ICOS data can be used. This is a model of the gas leak of Nord Stream, actually, from 2 months ago, the leak in Nord Stream. And the graph over on the right-hand side shows the concentration of methane measured on different ICOS stations, atmospheric stations, the high towers. And we can see that the peaks are appearing on different times. And this can then verify and help build these kind of models. Sorry. And there, this is a simple graph from a lot of ICOS stations. And it's also, yeah, pretty simple graph, but still high value of this data, showing a pretty clear trend of what's going on in the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So ICOS is quantifying a lot of these arrows going up and down to the atmosphere in the carbon cycle. And we're also contributing to modeling and large-scale reports for policymaking. And ICOS was present in COP27 just now in the last days. So now I'll talk a bit about our ICOS station that we're running up in Abisko. So we have to go up here to northern Sweden, far north. And there we have the Abisko Research Station, or in the Abisko area here. And over a bit to the east of that, we have our ICOS site. So it's a mire, a lot of lakes around it. Here's another picture of what it looks like. And yeah, so yeah, yet another picture. But why is Stordalen then important and interesting to study? it has permafrost, and like a lot of the areas in the Arctic, and all these grayer area here, they are pulsars, and they have permafrost, like Lena Ström was talking about in an earlier presentation. And the green areas in between here are the fens, the wet areas that she also mentioned. And our tower is just here, measuring, and our dominating wind direction is coming from over here and from over here. So we can actually then see what emissions or what's coming from the areas that are wetter and the areas that are drier and still have the permafrost. And the interesting thing here is also that this place is thawing. So we see, these fens, they are increasing in size, and these pulsars, they are diminishing. Here on this picture on the right, we can see a collapsed thaw pond. So the boardwalk used to go straight over here because, it used to be pulsar all the way, but it's thawing and the pulsar is collapsing and we get these wet ponds. Here's a picture of our igloo, our instrumentation hut. It's round to not obstruct the wind too much, but it makes it a bit difficult to mount things on the interior. So again, why is this mire important? Well, this tiny mire that we have up in northern Sweden actually looks a lot like big parts of the northern hemisphere or the Arctic region. And up here in Siberia and over here in Alaska and Canada, we have a lot of this kind of frozen peat that we have in Stordalen. Here's a picture of the areas that basically our mire is representing these areas as well. And so what happens in our mire that is thawing is good to be able to predict what will happen in the rest of these areas, and what effect it will have on greenhouse gases and then later on climate change. And finally, I'd like to highlight that all this data that we collect within ICOS is open and available on the portal. You find the address for it here, data ICOS EU portal. And anyone already working in Stordalen and new projects are, of course, welcome to use this data. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Niklas.